everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And oh, what a show have we got for you tonight. How about that last guest, huh, Paul? Oh, my goodness, he's got some problems. I wouldn't give his troubles to a monkey on a rock. Speaking of troubles, I know there's a lot of you out there right now that are a little concerned. You have trepidations. The secret's out. The cat is out of the bag. Paul and I are leaving show business. 35 years on the air entertaining the folks at home, and quite honestly, you're tired of it. So they said, hit the bricks, TV boy. Catch a cab, beat feet, and take that toupee with you while you're at it. So as a result, not a day goes by that I don't get stopped walking to work by a panic-stricken fan that races up to me and says, Regis. I have fun with our friend Regis, don't we, Paul? They say Dave. They say TV buddy. They say, what am I going to do now? You're going to leave the airwaves. What am I to watch? Well, there's at least 200 people out there that already know the answer to this. In celebration of their 200th subscriber, we've got them here tonight for you, folks. Wake the kids, phone the neighbors, hang on to your wigs and keys. Straight from the undisclosed location of the Board Game Batcave, we've got two of your favorites with a special Top 10 edition. It's the Board Game Black Belt and the Original Grumpy Gamer, giving you their top 10 games. Now, I have to warn you, I must remind you, this is merely an exhibition, not a competition. Please, no wagering. Take it away, boys.
Board Game Batcave for our first top 10 list, which I have here the OGG and the Board Game Black Belt. And we're going to talk about our top 10 games of all time.
All time.
Of course, that's limited to what we've actually played. But let's cut to the chase. Well, first, I'm going to prelude this by saying that our top 10 obviously changes over time. Some of the things on my top 10 were not even on my list 6 months ago. And I'm sure some of them will be gone in 6 months. So the way I operate on my top 10 are constantly changing, and I suffer a little bit from the cult of the new, but not all of it, as you'll see. And so we'll probably make this either a semi-annual event or before Gen Con, we can talk about games that we're going to like for the next year. And so let's go to number 10.
Number 10. So, as Chris said, this is really hard. You're literally trying to pare down hundreds of games, trying to pick a top 10. So there's going to be plenty of debate, plenty of people thinking that we're insane, plenty of people excited about some of the games or whatever. And it's probably going to change from time to time. The games that are on my list are definitely benefiting from being games I've played recently and things like that. So anyway, we'll just jump right to it. My number 10, top 10 games of all time. This one's been around for at least 25 years, maybe longer than that. Survive, Escape from Atlantis. It's a stronghold game. And it's for 2 to 4 players. I think it's been out for at least, 25 or 30 years?
30-year anniversary edition.
Yeah. So, the fun game, been around forever. Kind of an entry-level game. You could introduce just about anybody to Survive, and they're going to have fun with it. There's expansions available for it. Giant squids, dolphins, sharks, all kinds of stuff like that. So, number 10 for me, Survive, Escape from Atlantis.
And my number 10 it will probably be higher farther into this year as we go because I don't have enough expansions for it right now. But that would be Star Wars X-Wing miniatures. I've gotten to play this game maybe 4 times, and I love it, but I haven't gotten to play with any of the cards or advanced rules, really, so I'm really looking forward to that. Of course, the Star Wars theme had me, and I jumped right on it, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, and so it made number 10, just edging out a couple of other honorable mentions, which we'll get to later.
All right.
All right, so the only downfall I see on this Star Wars X-Wing game is the cost, because there's so many, which of course they planned on, but there's so many add-ons
Oh yeah.
that as a collector, I just have to have them all. It's like Pokemons or something. So it's going to break me before I get them all. But I'm looking forward to the Imperial Assault and the Armada.
Oh yeah.
Which are just going to eat up my income, the disposable income for the next year.
Well, that's the blessing and the curse of the Fantasy Flight stuff. If you really like it and it's backed by Fantasy Flight, then you know there's going to be tons of it. But then at the same time, if you feel like you have to get every part of it, then yeah, they keep you working. They're going to be putting out all kinds of stuff. But that's a good game, and those are great components that they've got so far. So I look for a lot of more to come from that line for sure.
Especially for people like me who don't really enjoy the painting as much as I do the collecting.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
those pre-painted miniatures are great. Number 9.
So my number 9 is actually going to show up much higher on this guy's list, so we'll just talk about it when it comes around. So just remember, my number 9 will come back around a little bit later.
All right, my number 9 is an oldie but a goodie. When I say I've suffered from the cult of the new, that only holds so far because some of these games last literally forever. And my number 9 is Blood Bowl, which I actually started playing back when it first came out, I believe. And now it's in this living playbook where it literally changes every day, I guess, if they make new rules all the time because you don't really, at least the last time I looked at it, which has been a while, I admit, but you would just go online and you download the newest version of it because it's always changing. It's like software. And but what I remember of it is like the only game I just said about Star Wars miniatures, I don't enjoy painting, but that's the only game that made me break out a brush and actually paint miniatures because it's that fun. And the collecting of the teams and the trying to make a team to beat your buddy that might have throwing goblins. You're throwing a goblin that has a chainsaw. It doesn't get better than that. I mean, that's literally as fun as I can think of a game could be. So I'm surprised it's not actually higher, other than it's just because it's been around so long and I haven't gotten it out in a while. But just talking about it's making me want to break it out again, so it make me go up higher.
Good.
Number 8.
So for me, number 8 is a small card game. It's a game called Love Letter. This is Senji Kanai, an AEG game for 4 players. I think actually you can play it from 2 to 4, actually, but best with 4 players. But this is a small card game, kind of a deduction game. Easy to teach and easy to learn, but still there's enough strategy that it keeps people interested in everything. So by this time, folks, if you're into games, you know about Love Letter, but I had to give it a little love and put it in here at number 8.
Check out our review.
That's right.
We did a review on that and the Lost Legacy, which is very similar.
Oh, yeah.
My number 8 is another one that's been around about, 3 or 4 years. The Adventurers Temple of Chalk. When this game came out, my brother actually called me because I was at Gen Con and asked me to pick it up for him. And I went and got in line, and it was sold out before I even got to it. So then it had me piqued, my interest piqued, because I knew nothing about it at the time. But I soon after got a copy, and I think it's one of the greatest games to put together since Mousetrap when you were a kid, and you thought building a little mousetrap was like as much fun as the game. Well, this one delivers on both fronts. The building of the temple and the running through the temple is just as fun to me because I don't know how many times I died. Makes dying fun. And so it'd be Adventures of the Temple of Chalk. The second one is good too, the Pyramid of Forest, but it to me falls short just because it doesn't have enough of the Indiana Jones type traps in it, where it's more like solving puzzles. And but the Temple of Chalk is going to break my number 8.
Can't argue with you there. All right, moving on to number 7. For me, this game's been around for a little while now too, but I really enjoy it. This is a game called Kingsburg. This is a Fantasy Flight game, or at least they're the ones that are printing it now. A lot of fun. This is for 2 to 5 players. Again, for me, this is a more fun game with the more players, so 4 or 5 is a lot more fun experience for me than a 2 or 3 player game. But Kingsburg has kind of a unique dice mechanic in there where you're rolling 3 dice and you're going to use that total, and you can either total up all 3 of your dice or just use 2 or just use 1. Split it up that way, and there aren't that many other games that use that system. I think Castles of Burgundy and Lords of Vegas, or one of those Vegas games, has a similar idea there, and I really like that. So for me, number 7, kind of been around a little while, Kingsburg.
I have not played that one yet. I need to break that one up. Is that high on your list? I really need to play it. My number 7 is technically not a board game. It's a card game, but so is Love Letter, so I'm going to throw it in there. Lifeboat. Lifeboat, we got it also at Gen Con, and I was actually sold it. I didn't know anything about it, and the guy working the booth demoed it for me, and it was an instant sale. I bought it and played it there. We played it probably 7 or 8 times at Gen Con, and then I've played it ever since. And they have a new one coming out. Supposed to have been coming out for the last 3 years, I think. Every year I look for it, and it's where the survivors in the lifeboat actually wind up on an island, and they're competing against each other for resources on the island rather than in the boat. I think it's the same concept, but I'll buy it just because I like Lifeboat so much. So, if you see a pattern in my games, it's either head-to-head games, historical games, or games where you can be cruel to somebody else. And Lifeboat fits the bill with the bucket of chum. So Lifeboat all the way up to number 7, which actually surprised me when I made my list that it fell that high.
Yeah, that's good ranking. I know you've been looking forward to that expansion or the add-on or whatever for a while, so hopefully they'll come around with it eventually. So my number 6 then is going to be Bang the Dice Game. This game probably is benefiting for the fact that you can play up to 8 players with this game. So it's a lot of I think by far that's as many players in my top 10 anyway. So that's helpful. If you've got a big group, you can pull out Bang for up to 8 people, and it's still pretty quick even with 8 people playing it. So, and full disclosure, I've never even actually played the card version of it. So I know there's a lot of people that like that a lot, but I think most people that have played both prefer the dice version. So my number 6 is Da Vinci's Bang the Dice Game.
I have played both versions, and when you brought over Bang the Dice Game, I was skeptical because it had few components compared to, the dice game comes with a big bullet, which a lot of people don't like, but I actually think it's pretty clever. And I like it better. I like it better than the card game because the card game seems to drag on a little bit more, whereas the dice game, you seem to get more plays in, I guess. And of course, you can't go wrong with dice. Dice. Anything you had dice do is probably going to be a winner. But number 6 is what we're on?
Yep.
Number 6 is another game that you plays up to 10 people, actually, and his was 8. So it's a very large game that I break out on occasion when we have a lot of people, and that's Formula D, or Formula Day if you're French. But since we're in Arkansas, I just always call it Formula D. But I saw this game played, I think, on Tabletop originally, their episode on it, and I thought I probably won't like it because I'm not a race fan or a car racing kind of fan, but it looked like a lot of fun just out of the box. And then I went and bought it, and it was. And the advanced rules make it even more fun, where you can actually get shot at while you're driving down the street and use your special abilities on the other guy to make him crash. And I've yet to meet anyone playing the game that didn't have a blast seeing somebody else roll a car into the crowd and explode. Yes. Which I think most people play for, because my son, every corner he takes in 6th gear. I mean, that's he says go purple or go home, I think. So that's a ton of fun for a very simple concept in a racing game setting. You can't lose with that one. And actually, that was one I was surprised was actually that low on my list, because I enjoy it so much. I thought it might be higher.
Well, it definitely made my honorable mention list for sure. It was in contention. It's a game that I don't own, but I played your copy of it a few times, and I think every time I've played it, there's been somebody playing it for the first time, and they go into it kind of skeptical. They say, racing? I don't care about racing, and then next thing you know, they're having a blast. So there's something about that dice rolling mechanism to that Formula D that just draws you into that game and makes it exciting and fun to watch what's going to happen to other people too. So I think it's a good pick, and it was high on my list too. It just didn't quite make the cut.
And I'd say if there was a downside, which there's hardly any downside to that game, but if there is one, it's that the maps are so expensive to buy new maps for this game. It's literally a piece of cardboard, and they want like $20 to $25 for that piece of cardboard. And so I have been hesitant to expand my collection of Formula D, but I probably will eventually.
Right. All right, so now we're into the top 5. So this is where they're going to, you would think these games are going to really start to sparkle, but this is where it gets even harder to really start paring stuff down. So my number 5 is probably going to surprise a lot of people out there, but I'm sticking with it. I'm going with good old Risk.
Dun, dun, dun.
My number 5. I think through my lifetime, I've spent more hours around a table playing Risk than probably any other game out there. Before I really even discovered the more intricate Euro-style games and things like that, I played Risk, and I would still happily play it. Yeah, I don't think it needs any further introduction. Number 5 for me is Risk.
So let me ask you a question. What about Legacy Risk?
Risk Legacy I have. I've yet to play it because I want to play it when I know I can get other players that are going to play all the way through the campaign style of it and everything. So, yeah, I'm very excited about it. I can't wait to play it.
You think that if it's everything that you think it's going to be, will it top Risk or topple Risk?
It might. I think it's going to be a different enough experience that it'll stand alone on its own, and I could see a time where I had Risk and Risk Legacy on a list together and everything. So I'm really looking forward to playing that. I've had it for a little while. It's been out for a couple, 3 years by now. But we just, we have so many games competing for the tabletop, on game night that it's been hard to get it on there. And that's going to be something that's going to take a while when we do get it on there. But so for right now, Risk Legacy is not on the list, but Risk is holding strong.
I will say for Risk, while I don't think it's in my list, it didn't meet probably my top 20. It just didn't. The caliber of that game is compared to some newer stuff, but it does hold a special place because I have played it more than probably any of these other games put together. And if you break out Risk, I'll always jump in there just because I will always go to Australia and hole up. Like everybody probably knows, it's like the first move in chess. If you're a chess player, everybody knows you're going to try something that first move, and they're going to block you. So anybody that winds up with 2 or more spots in Australia to start out the game with, they're going to start attacking immediately, trying to wipe that out. But yeah, that's a good one. And which leads to my number 5, which we're going to talk about next on his list. So we'll pass that on to him when we talk about number 4.
Okay, so my number 4, which I guess will be your number 5.
My number 5, yes.
Do you want to take it then, or?
I'll just start out by telling you that it's Libertalia, which we've done a review on, so you probably know my feelings if you've seen that video on it. It's one I feel guilty because not guilty, but I feel cheated because I passed on it for a couple of years before I actually played it, just because of the artwork. And I love it. I love playing. I love teaching it because it's when people, you've seen that where people figure out, oh, there's another way to screw your buddy in this. They do that. Oh. And it's one of those games where every time you play it, there's a new strategy that's added to your arsenal if you've played it several times, and you will break out a new way to beat somebody. And with the 30 different characters, each one of the little powers for each character fits what they would normally do on a pirate ship. And I just, you can't, I can respect a design like that. And so that pushed it way up my list, and just the fun I have with it. So Libertalia is my number 5, and
my number 4, Libertalia. For many of the same reasons. In fact, the only note I really had about it on here was the fact that there's that learning curve to it. So that could be a plus or a minus. If you're new to games, it's going to be a little bit of a minus because there is a learning curve that goes along with Libertalia that's going to help you play it better. But it's not so drastic that you're not going to figure it out relatively quickly, and then you'll be able to employ those, that strategy the next few times you play the game. So kind of surprised me that it ended up as high on my list as it did, coming in at number 4, but every time I'd try to push it down the list, it kept coming back on there. It's a very solid strategy game, plays 2 to 6 players. I've never played it just 2 players. I think that would be that would take a little of the fun away from it, I think, because all the players in this game are using majority of the same cards. So to me, a 2-player game might not be that much fun, but I've not played, so I could be wrong. So, but anyways, kind of a surprising entry even to myself, but I just went over it, and it kept coming out at number 4, Libertalia.
It's just a good game. If anything, this is, like I've heard a lot of reviewers say before, anything above number 5 on anybody's list is probably can move around a little bit, and it's probably going to stay there a long time. Mm-hmm. So if you see anything from now on our list, you may knock it down a peg or two, but you're not going to knock it out of the top 10 for a while because it's that good of a game, which is what my number 4 has been there for a long time, and that is Betrayal at House on the Hill. Mm-hmm. This has come out in 2 or 3 editions, and I've got, luckily, the first edition, which I still play, and the replayability of that game is the best I've seen of maybe any game ever.
Wow.
But I haven't played. I heard Tales of Arabian Nights, of course.
Yeah,
so I supposedly have to have a million different ways to play it. But I have not played that game. So out of all the games I've played, I mean, you have 50 different plots out of the box. That doesn't include any that are homebrewed or whatever. And so you got 50 different plots. Plus you've got like 8 different characters. And between those, and every time you play, a different person, even in the same plot device, can be the betrayer. So it has a betrayer, which makes it a plus. It's just, you never know halfway. It's like you play a regular board game for the first hour of the game, and then somewhere in the middle of the game, nobody knows when, everything turns on its head. And somebody could be your best guy that was sitting there holding your weapon for you, can turn on you and shoot you. Or he could open a pit to the underworld and summon demons, or he could turn into a werewolf, or, I mean, who knows? It's just, you never know. And it's just the greatest game ever, except for there's 3 of them. But it's definitely a number 4, if not higher. And if you have not played that game, even this guy I used to know at work that laughed at board games, went to a party one night where they were playing this. He came back and asked why he had never heard about this one, because I talked to the other board game. He said it was the greatest game ever. And I'm like, I've been telling you that this whole time about board games, and now he's a convert just because of that. I guess that's all the number 4s, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Number 3.
Number 3. My number 3, I think appears on Chris's list as well. Possibly higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alrighty. So I'm going to hold off and let you talk about your number 3 then.
All right. My number 3 is another oldie but goodie, and actually entire conventions are held for this game, and it's not Cosmic Encounter. But Axis and Allies. Yes. My first experience with Axis and Allies was playing against my brother and dad, and the game lasted 11 hours. And even though he was Germany, and we had 3 countries, he beat us anyway, but it was still one of the great eye-opening experiences in board gaming in my life, where I played this game and it lasted over 2 days. And that was a beginning for me. Like, a game can last 2 days, and then of the fact that it was just a million pieces, it was historical, I was learning about, my dad was teaching me about history as we played. I guess it holds a special place in my heart, and I will play that game. You will not be able to find many people to play that game now. Right. Because anybody willing, it's like the Twilight Imperium or something, where you get somebody to sit down for 3 to 6 hours to play a game, you're hanging with the right crowd. But I will pull it out anytime anybody wants to, because I love that game.
Yeah, that one was pretty high on my list also. Maybe not top 20, but up in there somewhere. And it's similar to Risk to me. I think a lot of people that get into strategy gaming come into it through one of those 2 games, or they're introduced to the games like that early on, and then that leads you to some other stuff. So it didn't make my list, but I have a soft spot in my heart too for that game as well.
Oh, and as a side note, there are many different editions of Axis and Allies now. There's D-Day and the Pacific and 1942 and whatever else. But I have not played all those, but if they're anything like this one, I'm talking about the original, just plain Axis and Allies when I say that.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm holding my number 3, but we're moving on to my number 2 now.
Well, let me break in because I think
Yep,
my number 2 is your number 3.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
So if you want to jump back to your number 3, which is my number 2, it'll lead right into that.
Perfect. So my number 3 is Jamaica. Asmodee is printing it right now. It's a GameWorks game. 2 to 6 players. This is a race game. We've done a review on it as well. And we'll let kind of Chris tell you more about it. But I've got it at number 3. Chris is holding it number 2, correct? And, you know, a lot of fun. A lot of fun. We, in fact, just played this recently with another gaming group last weekend or recently. And just enjoyed it as much every time it comes out of the box.
This is the game that I pull out whenever I have board game doubters, or people who don't play games and yet kind of scoff at the idea that I do, or make fun of me for spending so much time going to conventions and stuff about board games. My mother and my mother-in-law, being 2 of these people, I've let them play this game and they both loved it. So I think it was an easy sell. And as a matter of fact, I've played Libertalia and Jamaica with my mother-in-law, and Jamaica beat out Libertalia for her. She said both were good, but that was definitely a fun game. It's because it's so easy to teach. It's very straightforward racing game. You know immediately after watching 2 people take their turn what you got to do to win. And it's just being pirates is fun. So it's a winner.
And you're drawing cards and you're pulling out, everyone's pulling from the same pool of cards. So part of that game is that they know the ships usually are going to move kind of in a pack around that board. Eventually somebody will break out or something, but it creates its own drama. It creates a lot of back and forth because a lot of those ships are moving around into the same areas over and over. So it's a fun game, a simple premise that leads to a fun game.
And it forces people into conflict by landing on the same spot. You don't have a choice to fight. If they land on your space, you have to fight.
Absolutely.
Which pushes ahead the action, I guess. Right. You don't have to sit there and what they call turtle shelling or tortoise.
Yeah, tortoise.
You just bunker down and hope nobody picks on you.
Right.
Yeah, you're forced into it.
No doubt. So that was my number 3, your number 2.
Yeah, your number 2.
So this leads me to my number 2, which is Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride, this one, I think a lot of people will credit either Ticket to Ride or maybe Settlers, Settlers of Catan as being something that kicked off part of this latest boom in board gaming. I don't know if that's really the case or not, but Ticket to Ride is definitely a gateway game. Anybody can learn how to play it and anybody can have fun with it. It's simple, yet there's strategy involved if you want to do that, and you can also try to block other people's paths, so if you're the type that likes the in-your-face gaming, you can do that too. There's tons of expansions and extra maps and things like that available for it. Probably my favorite map right now is Legendary Asia. That's the one where you have the dynamite cars. So that's fun for me. They've got different maps and variations where for right now you can play anywhere from 2 to 6 players. And I imagine they'll probably, just keep generating maps every so often for fools like me that think they got to have them all. So my number 2, Ticket to Ride.
I haven't played all those other maps yet, which I'm anxious to, but it might go up on my list. It was close to the top 10, but it might break it in there if it has another map that really catches my eye. So that leads to number 1.
I think you're number 2. Or was Jamaica was your number 2?
Jamaica was my number 2.
Okay, I'm sorry. So so we're off to number 1.
My number 1 was on his list higher, and we come back to me for my number 1 and I really have a feeling like this one is only number 1 because it's brand new. And I hate to say that, but I think it might fall off. It could be pushed around next year, but it's not going to fall out of the top 5 either way. But this year, my number 1 is Dead of Winter, and I think just by anybody who's paying any attention to the board game community knows that that's not a stretch. That this game really has caught the attention of a lot of people, and it's got everything you want in a game. It's got zombies, it's got a betrayer, it's got 30 plus characters that you can be, it's got tension, I guess, it's got the drama with the cards,
Yes.
it's got storytelling, it's got everything that I want out of a game except maybe a historical perspective, and you could make one if you wanted to, I guess, but we had a lot of fun this year playing this game.
Sure
We
did.
played a lot, and Mikey was the betrayer every game.
Every time.
And so we're anxious to play a game where he's not the betrayer. But this year, this game took over for me, and it's my favorite game this year.
Well, it showed up at number 9 on my list, and it probably suffered a little bit for me because I'm getting a little tired of the zombie thing. So as soon as I heard there was yet another zombie game, I kind of threw up my walls right away. But of course, then we played it, and I really, really like it. So I predict it came in at number 9 for me this year. It'll probably come in maybe around 6 or so next year or next time we do it, because it is a really good game. I just was a little afraid to put it on because it's so new, and the zombie thing knocked it down a couple of pegs for me. But the Crossroads cards are genius. Plaid Hat came up with a great idea there, and as Chris mentioned, it's got a little bit of everything in it. Great storytelling that comes from those Crossroads cards, and to me that was the big eye opener, and that was the game changer for me. So I look forward to playing it again a bunch, and I do think it'll probably start creeping down my list a little bit in years to come. But so for me, that was number 9. Chris is number 1. That leads me to my number 1, which just happened to be, just coincidentally, the first game we reviewed on the Board Game Batcave. So my number 1 is Robinson Crusoe, Adventures on the Cursed Island. This is a Z-Man game, and this is a cooperative game, but to me, this one's a little different because you really can play this as a solo game. I've played hours and hours of this game solo, and it works perfect. It's not one of those cooperative games that you can make into a solo game if you want to play some of the other players or whatever. You can really play Robinson Crusoe as a true solo and have a good time with it, but it's of course made to be a cooperative, and I've mostly played it with the guys in our regular gaming group, so we kind of know each other's styles, and we've had a lot of fun with it.
Didn't
One or
we
two
win
times we
the first
played.
time we played it?
We did, although
We were cheating.
to be honest, I made an illegal move that probably would have changed things. So we actually ended up winning, but it might not have been totally legit, and that was my bad. I was tired, I guess. But anyway, my number 1 for right now, and this will probably slide down the list a little bit, but Robinson Crusoe just happens to be one of my favorite books, so it's like this game was made for me, and it hit it out of the park, in my opinion.
I agree. I think Robinson Crusoe is a very well designed game, and probably escaped my attention because I don't own it when I was considering my list. I think it's probably in my top 20 regardless, and it's very intricate. I mean,
It's
there's a lot of
challenging,
moving pieces or moving parts to the game that you've got to mesh together to win the game, and so it takes a team to be thinking that way. Because I don't know how many times we were about to make a move and someone would say, "Oh, but what? Don't we have to do this before we do that?"
Right,
and
that's
then,
true. Yeah.
So it's definitely my kind of game.
The pressure is on you from the start. I mean, round 1, they take it easy on you a little bit, but the pressure is on you right from the get-go from this game, kind of like Dead of Winter.
Mm-hmm.
Those zombies are coming right from the start. Robinson Crusoe, you realize right away you've got a limited amount of time to get a lot of resources gathered, so you have to hit the ground running in that game for sure.
All right, so there's our top 10. We got his number 1 is Robinson Crusoe. Mine's Dead of Winter. Which one would you prefer? Throw your comments to us about any of the top 10 that we've had. If you disagree, agree, whatever. We'll be keeping up with this list till next year, or we might even do one near Gen Con and see if anything's changed, kind of review the list. But Gen Con, we're definitely going to be having a what we want to get from Gen Con list, and then we'll have a Gen Con special. All kinds of good things coming. So stick around, and thanks for watching.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you.